Welcome to this video on the story of Édouard Manet, personal life, famous paintings, trivia. Édouard Manet was a French painter who was one of the leading figures of the Impressionist movement. Édouard Manet was born in Paris, France on January 23, 1832. His father, Auguste Manet, was a high-ranking official in the French government, and his mother, Eugénie Désirée Fournier, was the daughter of a diplomat. Manet was the second of 5 children. As a child, Manet was interested in art and he received drawing lessons from his uncle, an amateur artist. He also studied piano and was a talented musician. Manet's parents wanted him to become a lawyer, but he was determined to become an artist. In 1850, Manet began studying at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. He was a rebellious student and was more interested in studying the works of the old masters than in following the academic curriculum. Manet was particularly inspired by the work of Diego Velázquez and Francisco Goya, and he made copies of their paintings in the Louvre. In 1853, Manet traveled to Germany, Italy, and Switzerland, where he made sketches and studied the work of other artists. He returned to Paris in 1854 and began working on his own paintings. In 1856, Manet met the artist Albert de Balleroy, who became a lifelong friend and mentor. Manet also met other artists and writers who would become important figures in the Impressionist movement, such as Edgar Degas, Claude Monet, and Émile Zola. Manet studied painting and drawing at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and he was heavily influenced by the work of the old masters, particularly Diego Velázquez. Manet's early paintings were in the traditional style of the day, but he later developed a more modern, experimental approach. He was known for his bold brushwork and his use of bright, vibrant colors. Manet's paintings often depicted contemporary life in Paris, and he was one of the first artists to paint modern, everyday subjects such as cafe scenes and street scenes. Manet's work was controversial in his lifetime, and he struggled to gain recognition from the art establishment. However, he was eventually able to achieve some success, and his work was exhibited at the Paris Salon. Édouard Manet was a private person and not much is known about his personal life. However, here are a few facts about his personal life. Manet was married to Susan Leenhoff, a Dutch pianist and singing teacher. They met in 1851 and were married in 1863. Leenhoff had a son from a previous relationship, and Manet adopted him and raised him as his own. Manet was close to his family and had a close relationship with his mother, who was a major influence on his life and career. He was also close to his sister, Juliette, who was also an artist. Manet had a wide circle of friends and was known for his wit and charm. He was a regular at Parisian cafes and was friends with many writers and artists, including Edgar Degas, Claude Monet, and Émile Zola. Manet was a heavy smoker and drinker, and he was known to enjoy the nightlife in Paris. He also suffered from poor health, and he had several operations throughout his life. Manet was deeply affected by the death of his brother, Eugene, who died of tuberculosis in 1871. He produced several paintings and drawings inspired by Eugene's death, including the coffin and the dead man. Manet was a passionate supporter of the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune. He volunteered as a nurse at a military hospital and produced several paintings and drawings inspired by the war. Manet died of syphilis on April 30, 1883 in Paris. He was 51 years old. Édouard Manet was one of the leading figures of the Impressionist movement. Some of his most famous paintings include Olympia. This painting depicts a reclining woman in a provocative pose, with a servant standing nearby. The painting caused a scandal when it was exhibited at the Paris Salon because of its frank depiction of a prostitute. It depicts a reclining woman in a provocative pose, with a servant standing nearby. The woman is shown wearing only a ribbon around her neck and a flower in her hair, and she stares directly at the viewer with a challenging gaze. The servant stands at the side of the bed, holding a bouquet of flowers and a letter. Olympia caused a scandal when it was exhibited at the Paris Salon because of its frank depiction of a prostitute. The painting was seen as a radical departure from traditional notions of beauty and femininity, and it was widely criticized by the public and the art establishment. Despite the controversy, Olympia is now considered one of Manet's masterpieces and one of the most important works of the Impressionist movement. The painting is known for its bold brushwork and its use of light and color. Manet used a limited palette of colors, but he applied the paint in thick, expressive strokes. The bright white of the woman's skin and the contrasting black of the servant's dress are particularly striking. Olympia is a powerful and influential work that challenged traditional notions of femininity and sexuality. It remains one of Manet's most famous and iconic paintings. The Luncheon on the Grass. This painting depicts 2 fashionable men and a woman having a picnic on the grass. The painting was rejected by the Paris Salon and caused a stir when it was exhibited at the Salon des Refuses in 1863. A bar at the Folies Bergère. This painting depicts a young woman working at a bar in the Folies Bergère, a famous Parisian nightclub. The painting is known for its reflection in the mirror, which shows the back of the woman and the customer standing in front of her. The music in the Tuileries Gardens. This painting depicts a group of people listening to a band in the Tuileries Gardens in Paris. The painting is known for its bright, vibrant colors and its depiction of fashionable Parisians. The execution of Emperor Maximilian. This painting depicts the execution of Emperor Maximilian of Mexico by firing squad. The painting was inspired by the Mexican Empire and the French intervention in Mexico. These are just a few examples of Manet's most famous paintings. He produced many other notable works throughout his career, and his work is highly prized by collectors and museums around the world. Here are some little-known facts about Édouard Manet. Manet was a talented musician and he studied piano as a child. He was also a fan of opera and was friends with several famous composers, including Richard Wagner and Charles Gounod. Manet was a heavy smoker and drinker, and he was known to enjoy the nightlife in Paris. He was a regular at cafes and was often seen smoking cigars and drinking absinthe. Manet was a passionate supporter of the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune. He volunteered as a nurse at a military hospital and produced several paintings and drawings inspired by the war. Manet was close friends with the writer Émile Zola, who was a major advocate for the Impressionist movement. Zola wrote several articles and essays in support of Manet and the Impressionists. Manet was a talented draftsman and he produced a large number of drawings and etchings throughout his career. Many of these works were inspired by his travels to Spain, where he was influenced by the work of Francisco Goya. Manet's paintings were highly prized by collectors and museums during his lifetime, but he struggled to achieve financial stability. He was forced to sell many of his paintings to pay his debts and support his family. Manet was a private person and not much is known about his personal life. However, he was close to his family and had a close relationship with his mother, who was a major influence on his life and career. I'm sorry, but there is no Édouard Manet Museum. Manet was a French painter who was one of the leading figures of the Impressionist movement, and his work is on display in museums and galleries around the world. Some of the museums that have significant collections of Manet's work include the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, France. The Musée d'Orsay has a large collection of Impressionist paintings, including many by Manet. It is home to works such as Olympia, The Luncheon on the Grass, and a bar at the Folies Berger. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, United States. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has a small but impressive collection of Manet's work, including The Fifer, The Old Musician, and The Races at Longchamp. The National Gallery in London, United Kingdom. The National Gallery has several paintings by Manet in its collection, including The Luncheon on the Grass, The Bar at the Folies Berger, and The Balcony. The Art Institute of Chicago, United States. The Art Institute of Chicago has a small collection of Manet's work, including The Luncheon on the Grass and The Old Musician. The Louvre in Paris, France. The Louvre has a small collection of Manet's work, including The Balcony and The Dead Christ with Angels. There are many other museums and galleries around the world that have works by Manet in their collections, so it is likely that you can find a Manet painting on display at a museum near you.